Hello and welcome to the Mac Admins podcast. I'm your host this evening, Tom Bridge. I'm a partner at Technolutionary here in lovely Washington, D.C. And tonight I'm joined by Pepijn Brienne. Say hello, Pepijn.
Hello, everybody.
Pepijn is a security researcher at Duo Security in scenic Ann Arbor, Michigan.
I reach it and I research it.
Yeah. We're also joined by Charles Edge, Director of Professional Services at Jamf Software, haver of many titles, some of which we may not know. So, Charles, say hello.
Hello.
That's a pretty sweet hat, Charles. I really enjoy it. And we're also joined by Adam Codiga. Adam, say hello.
Hi. Hello. I'm a IT operations leader at Upserve in the great tiny city of Providence, Rhode Island. Although we also have some offices in San Francisco, so that adds some legitimacy. I'm not as good of a reacher, but I hear that Tom Cruise is really good at that.
Yeah, he's a jack reacher.
Yes.
Very nice. And last but not least, we are joined by Marcus Ransom. Say hello, Marcus.
Hi, everybody. How you going?
You seem to be upside down, Marcus. Is that
This is very
intentional?
appropriate.
I say we just roll with it.
Yeah, that's. I'm back in Australia now, so I'm fine. You're all upside down.
Got it, man. This whole like hemispheres thing just confuses the heck out of me. So,
There we go.
Oh, man.
so fresh off of his tour of the Midwest and other parts unknown, Marcus, thanks for joining us tonight from, or actually today for you, and you're in sunny Melbourne.
I am. So welcome to the future.
Yeah, fantastic. Wonderful. So we're all here to talk today about the Apple event. And let's see, the Apple event called Hello Again, themed after Apple's original event, Hello. It was focused today primarily about an hour's worth of the hour and a half time frame on
All about
brand
Apple
new
TV.
Yeah, it was all about Apple TV and the iPhone sales. No. It was about 13 and 15-inch MacBook Pros. And the new models have taken a slight departure from previous models. There's no more MagSafe. There's no more USB 3. There's no more Thunderbolt 2. There is definitely a headphone jack on there, though. Apparently, courage does not extend to the to the MacBook. But Apple now has a brand new 13 and 15-inch MacBook Pro that have 4 Thunderbolt 3 / USB-C 3.1 ports on the side. And so do we want to spend any time on the first 25 or so minutes of that podcast or of the event when I was pretty sure they were trolling all of us?
Something TV. And I think the only interesting bit that came out of it was that they seem to have figured out the SSO thing where you can sign into your cable provider. So that's nice.
Or they'll have it figured out by December at least.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Whenever it's due.
And I'm expecting it to be US only for a lot of those features. So have fun with that.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll get it in like 4 or 5 years, about the same year that the volume purchase program and the device enrollment program comes to you, Marcus.
Yeah.
One of the more interesting features of these brand new MacBook Pros is that they have a touch strip, which is takes the entire row of the function keys and excises them entirely.
Strip.
And it's a control strip, touch strip,
Touch
bar.
bar.
There we go. And
I'm very particular about capitalization. It's touch with a capital T, space, capital B, bar.
Nice. Excellent.
Just one B, not 2 Bs.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Charles, for that further semanticism.
But it's a Retina OLED display strip that is touch sensitive, and in the upper right hand corner where the power button would be is a sapphire crystal covered Touch ID reader.
Sweet.
Right. And so the Touch ID reader is actually a really interesting little piece of hardware. It is powered by a brand new piece of silicon from Apple called the T1 chip. And the T1 chip appears to be a whole system on a chip that is running a custom version of all things, WatchOS.
Well, it makes sense. I mean, it's probably pretty similar to what they started integrating into the iPhone 5S, I'm guessing. Very interested, of course, in seeing the iFixit teardown kind of get an idea of like what exactly it might be. Given that Apple can pretty much roll their own silicon at this point, they probably did the same thing as they do with all the custom chips for the iOS devices at this point, rolled their own and shoved it in there and somehow figured out the best, the way to make it work with the as of now Intel processors. But we'll see how that goes. It's a good start.
I think it's important to note that T1 chip means that the real crypto is coming to Mac. So the secure enclave and all the things that go along with it. The fact that we can use Touch ID to buy things on Amazon is great, but as administrators, it's like, well, that's one of the things that was keeping us from being able to do, for example, manage OpenIN. And be able to control the flow of files within the operating system. So.
One important, I think, a sentence or just one sentence really that was in the 10.12.1 release notes was that pretty much all of the iOS frameworks and APIs you get to interact with the Secure Enclave processor on the iOS devices is verbatim applicable now on macOS. So basically, whatever you're using on iOS to do Secure Enclave, key generation, all of that, and storage is now directly applicable on macOS 10.12.1, which is, I think, very exciting because that means you can, you get a lot of stuff thrown in there that doesn't need a whole lot of special casing, whatever, for the platform. They've made sure that it is, parallel with what developers already are using in iOS. So I'm looking forward to seeing some use of that.
Would that
fantastic
include...
finger work, Phil?
yeah, fantastic finger work, Phil. And would that include some things like sealed containers, such that your password sealed containers could essentially be unlocked with the same Touch ID sensor, on your Mac as you would on the iOS side? Is that what the theme is?
Yeah, as far as I can tell here, and I'm just going by what they announced, initially in 2015 about what the Secure Enclave processor gets you, is that you can have it generate a key pair where the private key stays in the Secure Enclave and does not come out. So there's no way to extract it. You can ask it to sign stuff, but the private key never comes out. So, and that coupled with the Touch ID. So basically, if you want to do a signing operation, you can say and require Touch ID to actually verify that this is good to go. So you get all this, basically everything that you can do on iOS, you can now start using on macOS. Obviously, there's more, you have more of a breadth of frameworks and freedom to write your own apps. But the basic construct of having a key pair that is resident on the Secure Enclave only, that you can ask it to sign something for you, and then coupled with the Touch ID to verify that the person that wants to do this is indeed allowed to do that, is it's the same as an iOS, so it's going to be pretty interesting.
Yeah, and there's also another feature there that Phil showed off, which was the ability to switch to do fast user switching on a Mac between, just with your Touch ID fingerprint, so that if you sit down on a machine that someone else is logged into and your fingerprint is registered, you can then, switch over to your user immediately without having to even do anything else. It'll recognize.
And that's a feature I would expect to see it come to iOS in a version or two as well.
Yeah, for me that was
more than 32 gigs of RAM.
Yeah, exactly. For now, for me that was the interesting part of the keynote, where everything else was obviously, as you'd expect, consumer oriented, making people who are going to buy these devices or want these devices get excited about it. But for us to know from what they presented how this is going to change what we have to do, we've all been reading the tea leaves and knowing that there's a Secure Enclave coming. What's that going to do to imaging? What's that going to do to provisioning machines? Seeing them demonstrate on stage fast user switching with Touch ID, that's going to change a lot of the way we set machines up and manage machines and allow people to do things on machines. I'm sure everybody's security team is going to want to know all about that and how it works.
Yeah,
sure.
right now,
one of the pieces that...
Go ahead,
Charles.
Right now, you can't lock a machine into a DEP environment. I mean, you can enroll, but then you can kind of remove the machine. So I think from activation, lock, bypass, and DEP enforcement, that kind of becomes a critical step.
Yeah. And there was a piece from Ars Technica this afternoon that clarified a bit about how many fingerprints it can store, which is it can now store up to total 5 fingerprints across total 3 users. So it's a place where the number of possible fingerprints it's going to hold. I'm sorry.
How many cat paws?
How many cat paws can? Yeah, that's a good question. How many tiny beans?
Yeah, because
now,
I think Ashes is wondering because Ashes
good kitty.
My podcast recording.
It's not a podcast until somebody's cat is on.
Just throwing this out there. I don't have a cat, so I don't know if I can be here anymore.
Oh.
I'll get Charles. Oh, there goes my mic. Okay, yeah.
But yeah. So I mean, it looks like this isn't something where you'll be able. I mean, and of course, with the Secure Enclave, it's not like you can have a central database of fingerprints that you can, take once and just allow, provision that way. So that's not how that's worked, and it doesn't look like this is really something that's intended to work as a pure login mechanism, at least not yet, or at least not for multiple users across the space.
I think it's also going to be interesting that it's going to be consumer facing and user facing. My feeling is this is something that the users are going to be exploiting and using rather than us as admins, where we're really there to let them use it when they want to, rather than control it, try to manage the touch bar or put corporate branding on it.
I think we're always looking to control things, right? But like right off the bat, people were like, what sort of Apple features what sort of MDM features is Apple going to give us to control the Touch ID? And the same thing with the iPhone. The Touch ID is your friend. The Touch ID makes it easier for your users to use a password on your computer. And you're getting away from a password, even if it's a single character, which I've never seen. What are you talking about? I've never seen somebody with a single character password. But even if it's a single character password, the Touch ID gets them away from a password that other people can be exposed to.
Well, or you could see it another way. You could make Touch ID sort of a second factor, right? Like you have a password, and you still need that fingerprint to actually prove. It's the what you have, and I think a fingerprint is rather definitively something only you have. Although it sounds like if you had some glue and some other tools, you could do it. But I guess that'll be the next step in showing how quickly this can be defeated. For now,
I do think it's an interesting point. I do think it's an interesting point that Touch ID on a phone was a little different because the phone is something that's in your pocket. It's pretty much
and single user.
Versus a computer. You have Touch ID on your computer, but it may be easy to get you away from your computer. And I don't want to play this conspiracy game and be like, the Touch ID is the worst thing possible because I can make this resin cast of your fingerprint.
Right, of course.
But it makes you think that, again, it's just easier to separate people from their computers than it is their phones. I think it will be neat if, especially now that a few episodes ago we had Richard on talking about I don't know the term for what he was talking about, but password plus biometric to get into a Mac.
Two-factor authentication, perhaps?
Multi-factor? Yeah, multi-factor or two-factor, the typical USB-based device, personal identity devices that you would have on your Mac. I think it would be really interesting. I'm not sure if I'd call it interesting yet, but I want to see what companies might do in the future to combine the fingerprint with password ID, which, that's not really what Apple wants to do, though. Apple ID, the Touch ID is all about replacing the password with your fingerprint to make you more likely to use a password.
Well, password managers will probably jump on this in no time. I'm sure that we'll see LastPass and 1Password and all those apps dive on this. They already do it on iOS, and if the method of doing this is very much the same on macOS, I could totally see those apps picking it up in a heartbeat.
But it's only using it on that device. My understanding of this is that it's not something that's going to cross devices. So if you've set up your Touch ID on your phone,
right.
I would feel it's unlikely that then means it's going to be automatically working on your Mac.
According to what Apple's done in the past, they shouldn't be doing that because
exactly.
I feel like a lot of what Apple has done in the past is all about the fingerprint never leaves the computer.
Yeah.
The fingerprint
it's in the secure enclave.
Related to your password.
I don't see that ever syncing because it's in it's in that T1 chip.
And that's fine. That's how it should be.
That's exactly right. And
people are discussing in the podcast Slack channel at the moment about the implication in labs, in schools, and education environments. I wouldn't be surprised if the first MDM command we've got for this is your simple yay or nay, that in large multi-user environments, it's going to be like with the shared iPads at the moment. It's like, no, that's not going to work. So we'll just turn that off.
Yeah.
And we already have that available.
For
iOS, so it's just going to be extending it.
It'll just be an extension of the MDM spec, and I think that makes a lot of sense. Rich Troughton, for those of you who don't know him, or Troughton on the Slack,
nobody doesn't know him.
Yeah, right.
Who?
I'm just saying, friend of the show, Rich Troughton, has said that he'll be interested to see if there's any kind of integration between Touch ID and the EFI, and so whether or not you could have like Touch ID enabled File Vault to unlock.
Yeah,
which would be
that's a challenge because
imagine when you type sudo if it asks you for a pin from your phone.
But I mean that's a good question. We're less than 8 hours away from the announcement of the product. I think there's going to be some really exciting stuff coming out. There's been exciting stuff posted just this evening, but yeah, I mean,
manage the control strip with an MDM policy.
Oh, I'm sure that's coming.
Well, I think there's a lot to get into later on, but I think as much as I'm like I said a few minutes ago, like Touch ID makes your users more secure. I think at the same part, there's no reason to have it be a button that somebody can turn on in a lab environment.
But what we should really be talking
just syncing everybody's fingerprints to Active Directory.
Yeah.
So back to the TV app. And Marcus didn't use it until his country's internet speeds catch up to what it requires to stream.
I think reading Twitter and watching NFL is the most important technological breakthrough of the last 10 years.
So Touch Bar support on terminal. So obviously we get to keep having a terminal.
Yep.
That's great. I'm pretty excited, stoked about that.
So I was watching the keynote in a literal physical peanut gallery with some coworkers. Apologize if any of them are listening right now. So I did have some trouble hearing all parts of the keynote. What are some of the highlights they mentioned about like terminal control on the Touch Bar? Because
they just said it was there. They didn't actually tell us anything.
So there wasn't any like decent screenshots or anything.
There were some good screenshots, and I think a lot of that there is for the they're taking our escape away. Now that's turned from we can't use to escape isn't far enough to the left. So
can't you do control open bracket instead of escape? And
you're going to start an argument with that. But what I saw was all sorts of brackets, braces, things like that in the Touch Bar, and the ability to be able to map things yourself. So something where you can customize it to for whichever particular text editor, and whether you want to put tabs or spaces in there, you can set that up yourself. So
all customization, everything that I've ever seen slows me down. except for what was available in the 1970s when they wrote all this stuff, you know? Just throwing that out there. Everything we've tried to make the terminal and stuff like that faster just seems to slow me down, with the exception of maybe color, you know?
You've typed up with 2 fingers, Charles, so you know that, you know, I'm already slowed down, so this is not going to...
Wait, so you type with 2 fingers and Tom types with 4?
4. Well, sometimes you use the thumb.
So sometimes just 1.
Hey, I'm just saying, I can still do 70 words per minute. Doesn't matter.
I was going to say,
I type a 10, but only if I have a Magic Keyboard 2. It can't be the Magic Keyboard 1. It has to be light and powered.
Keyboards is an interesting way to look at this. So at this stage, it's just on the MacBook Pros. What happens if you're using an external keyboard? I'm interested to see. Yeah, or is there going to be a Magic Keyboard 3 that's going to have the touch bar on it? Is that going to be something that's going to come with the desktop? So I'm really interested to see how this gets integrated with desktops, or is that there are no more desktops?
There was some rumor that the T1 actually that the chipset itself and the libraries that were updated as part of the 10.12.1 update that dropped today, the installer that dropped this afternoon, even.
That's WatchOS.
Well, I mean that it is running WatchOS, but that also there is support for near-field libraries in there, and so that essentially at that point you could have a Magic Keyboard 3 that has a pathway to your Mac, even though it's not plugged in directly to your Mac, because it's doing it all with near field. And that's certainly an option for to allow that to be extended to machines where the keyboard isn't integral, and you just need to worry about the exterior or the external settings of the entire thing. And it definitely is going to provide an engineering challenge to Apple, but I think they're up to the task.
Yeah, is the Secure Enclave going to exist on the logic board of the machine, and then the external keyboard is just a conduit to push information to it? Because I can imagine having a Secure Enclave on the keyboard could pose, real risks and real challenges.
Well, one's easier than others, obviously, like getting the T1 or the whatever it'll be, T1, T2 to T800. It will be integrated on the Terminator. It will be integrated on the motherboard, so that's easy. Yeah. The reader part is not that complicated either, because what it reads off the sensor goes into the Secure Enclave anyway. So I'm not sure that there's a big risk there of separating the Touch ID sensor from SEP. I mean, I don't know how they conceptually see that, if they want the whole system to be, married from birth and doesn't ever get separated. But then sometimes people break their Touch ID sensors and they need to swap them out. So I don't think that's a huge issue, and I don't think that they need to do some like magic ceremony where those two get joined together.
I think if you break the Touch ID sensor on a Mac, pretty much if you break anything on a Mac now, it's a full replacement of the device, On
a Mac or iOS?
Both.
Oh.
I mean, when was the last time you took a Mac into the shop and actually had them send it back?
The trackpad looks expensive and large.
Yes. And made entirely of glass.
I don't know. It remains to be seen, because it would look kind of goofy to have like an external keyboard with a Touch ID sensor on it. Obviously, they're sort of set on the color scheme on it, and so it's either white or black, I guess. So we'll have to see where they go with this. This is a first start, and who knows.
So let's do a quick run through. Yeah. So you've got a 13 and a 15-inch MacBook Pro. They're 14% thinner, coming in at 4 pounds. And 12% thinner than an Air. They have 67% more brightness, 25% more colors, Core i7s, quad core, 2133 megahertz 4 gigs of VRAM, 3.1 gigabytes per second storage. That's not gigabits, that's gigabytes per second. Up to 2 terabytes, 50% faster storage. New, thinner thermal architecture. New speakers, that's the important part. These don't have pumps on them. I'm pretty bummed about that. I was hoping for the watch speakers to come to the
The sneeze.
right. So 130% more 3D graphics, 60% more gaming. I don't know if that means that you have to game on it 60% more of the time, or that the games run 60% faster, but 57% faster video editing. The Intel Iris graphics chip, 4 Thunderbolt 3 ports, and then all those ports can run at 100 gigabits per second, which means that you can have like 2 5K monitors, I think was the example that they used. And the most important thing is there's a headphone jack and a courage emoji in the touch strip.
And no lightning.
So, yeah, there's just so much going on there. I mean, on one point, we've been arguing for years that Apple needs to get with it and they need to standardize, and then they come up with the MacBook Pro with a ton of USB-C ports, and it matches all of the monitors that are coming out from a bunch of different manufacturers, and it matches all the docks that are coming out from manufacturers, and we go nuts. And whatever stupid blog is like, your iPhone can't plug into your new MacBook Pro because, you know, it's impossible to buy a Lightning to a USB-C port. And
there's actually a USB to
so we've
Lightning,
had
USB-C to Lightning cable now in the store. I went and priced.
Exactly.
Yeah,
It's been there since the MacBook came out.
That's right.
Yeah.
I've been trying to find a USB-C charger forever, and I actually found one on Amazon that doesn't work. So
Oh,
In fact, as a
Anchor
as a
has quite
MacBook-
a lot, by the way. But
As a MacBook owner, I've
a lot of
been
the Anchor batteries get confused because when you're trying to charge your MacBook from the Anchor thinks that you're trying to charge the battery, so it pulls power from your MacBook. But
So
I just
one-
feel like we've had a crazy like route to this point that we are now with the MacBook Pro, that you know, everybody wanted more standards, and now we have a device with a ton of USB-C ports, a ton of third-party support from companies like LG, and you know, dock companies like OWC. We're at the point that everybody wants us to be at, right?
Ish. I mean, you know, I have a USB-C MacBook, and I haven't used it that much because everywhere I go, I need to take 4 more adapters. So the savings in weight, I basically end up having to pick up in adapters, you know?
Yeah, I'm a MacBook user. I'd looked at getting one of the USB-C to Lightning cables for my phone, but then when the rumors started out about the MacBook Pros, I thought, well, I'm going to wait until this machine comes out, because I'm sure that's going to be a whole slew of accessories are going to hit the market now that everybody is going to need to buy things. And it's been a bit of a pain, but really just having a decent hub that can allow a bunch of things to plug in. Most of the time, if you're plugging things into it, you're kind of doing it wrong.
Well,
you know,
I mean, we say before we go and give a presentation, or I mean, there are, I don't know that I necessarily think that if you're plugging a bunch of stuff in, you're doing it wrong. Not every conference venue has enough wireless to do screen sharing, or B, Apple TVs hooked to projectors, you know?
right. And
So.
one of the interesting things that I think we got out of today was Apple basically saying, hey, you should have a place where you can plug all these in. And by the way, we're now selling these LG 4K and 5K monitors for $700 and $1,300.
Not Apple monitors.
Not Apple monitors, LG monitors.
but
with,
potentially
you know,
almost exactly the same.
But
And you
I think
can have a bunch of USB-C to Ethernet, USB to VGA for the enterprise crowd, and everything like that hanging off the back of this. Well, I know at my previous workplace, we'd started looking at that with USB-C connectivity on USB 3 connectivity on displays because the Thunderbolt displays were just too old and too expensive. And it doesn't really matter if you've got a USB to Ethernet adapter off the back of a monitor because you plug it in once and you leave it there. It's also interesting that Apple really appears to have abandoned making displays the way they're pushing these LG displays.
I think it's fine because they were using LG panels or whatever. There's only a few manufacturers of these things to begin with. They were just wrapping expensive, aluminum and glass frames around them. I'm totally fine with them getting out of that business. If they have a couple that they recommend and say these are good, we approve. Moving on.
So I'm not usually a specs whore, or excuse me, I'm not usually a specs queen when it comes to a lot of these. When it comes to the actual bits and bobs that end up in the machine. But I thought it was really interesting that in the 15-inch you can get it in 16 gigs of RAM or you can get it in 16 gigs of RAM. I was kind of expecting there to be a different upper bound there.
I would have liked a 32. I don't like the vision that I get whenever I see beach balls that there's a mass LAN war going on inside my computer.
Yeah, and my friend Sammer said it best when he said, "I'd prefer my apps not to have to knife each other in the back for resources. That's my real world." And it'd be nice for a couple VMs to live in harmony. Especially, I run a VM for Channelizer on the Windows side. So when I'm doing spectrum analysis, I really want to throw a lot of memory at that. Because there's a lot of visuals that come out of that. And virtualizing without dedicated 3D support means you got to throw more RAM at it. And it would be really nice for me to have an 8 gig VM running, as well as Mail, which is a hog, Chrome is a hog, Safari is a hog. There's a lot of memory pressure out there.
2 out of the 3 apps,
16 gig
should be running at all. By the way,
I'm sorry.
Mail and Safari shouldn't be running at all.
Okay, so we'll switch over to Charles here for a minute. So,
so did anyone else notice that Phil Schiller doesn't iron his shirts anymore?
It's just the worst.
Like I said, he's been hanging out with Eddie Q too much.
He doesn't.
What I was going to say about the
ahead.
memory, real quick, is that it's silly because the 6th generation, or as they were formerly known as Skylake, support up to 64 without issue. So it's really an Apple decision here, I'm guessing. So maybe we'll see some no third-party memory, but maybe some pressure from customers on this, and at some point we'll see a 32 gig option because it's kind of silly to go with a quarter of what it supports.
What has to happen is, go ahead.
We've got to have something to get everyone to buy revision B of this, and clearly it's going to be RAM.
Yeah, I guess so.
I see Samsung releasing one, and then Apple will, and then the Samsung one will explode. And so,
Man, I gotta wonder how much extra thermal testing they did on these laptops after the Galaxy Note disaster, and how many extra layers of QA they've gone through.
Well, they probably just didn't overclock everything. That's
that's a good start.
The question has been asked as to what happens when you plug 4 chargers into all 4 available USB-C ports.
It obviously charges 4 times as fast. Come on, that's easy math.
or you get a TSA warning where they're no longer allowed to fly anymore. So
I think the MacBook unlocks the 32 gigabytes of RAM. That's how you get 32 gigs.
It's like the Konami code.
Yeah.
It's like if you turn a bag of holding inside out.
Whoa!
So the other interesting thing with tech specs,
the whole universe.
The other interesting thing with tech specs is the deletion of the MacBook Air from the range, now replaced by the non-touch bar 13-inch.
Sort of.
Yeah.
Makes sense, right?
Actually,
I kind of
want to go with that, by the way.
Did they say they're not going to make the Air anymore, or did they just say that the new one is lighter and thinner than the Air?
So both. So they got rid of the 11-inch from the store. The 13-inch is still in the store. They also pitched a case as to why the 13-inch MacBook Pro is a great the new 13-inch MacBook Pro is a great replacement for the existing 13-inch Air, even though it's a lot more expensive. So I think for a while, I think this started with the 12-inch MacBook Retina. Apple has been trickling new products and new features. So they're not going to overhaul all of the Macs all at the same time. But they introduced a new Mac, whatever time ago. They came out with the 12-inch Retina. They, via press release, bumped up the minimum specs for a 13-inch Air to 8 gigs and 128 gigabyte storage. Now they sort of got rid of the 11-inch Air. They still have the regular 13-inch Air, but they made this great pitch as to why the 13-inch Air isn't as good as this new version of the Pro, even though it doesn't have the touch bar. I think that the 13-inch Pro without a touch bar is just going to hold us over, along with the 13-inch Air that's still in the marketplace. They're just going to hold us over between 6 and 12 months for the new version of the 12-inch MacBook Retina to come out.
Well, and I think there's a problem there. And the guys on ATP summed it up nicely, and it has everything to do with power classes of the processors involved. You've got the MacBook processor, which is incredibly power efficient, but doesn't have what you'd call a lot of horsepower. And the Air is a substantially more powerful processor than what's in the MacBook now. And so I almost wonder if there's a place for an improved MacBook in that lineup overall, because I mean, the MacBook Pro, whether you're in the 13-inch version or the 15-inch version, is a heavyweight punching processor. And there's just I mean, if there are really 4 classes of processors out there, we've got one of all 4 right now. The i5 that's in the Air is the 5th generation machine, so it's still a Haswell, but it still punches above its weight, at least in terms of competitiveness with the MacBook itself. So I think that there is, if they really want the MacBook Air to go away, they're going to need to provide something that uses that same processor class. And right now, they're just not interested in doing that.
Yeah.
How long before it's an ARM processor?
I think something's going to happen next year.
Well, and Charles, I think that's the big question right now. How long is it before it's an ARM processor? And that's a really good question, because as we all saw from benchmarking this year, the A10 Fusion chip that's in the iPhone 7 is a barn burner.
Well, I think
does it actually burn barns?
No, that's the Note.
Right. Sorry.
I think Apple has now positioned itself to basically, roll whatever CPU they want, right? With the ARM, at least, they have the full capability now of pretty much fabricating whatever they want. So if they need to make, very model line specific CPUs where you have, let's say, 4 cores for heavy lifting, 2 cores for, light loads, or 6 and 4 or whatever it is, they can totally roll that in that new world where ARM is the choice. I think they need to pick up a little more on the graphics side. I mean, they may already have, and all of this is already done, and we're just getting slowly eased into this ARM transition. But once they control that, they can very fine-grained, control the model lines between the MacBook. I don't know if an Air is going to be around, maybe something like it, MacBook Pro, and
I see it going away.
What's that?
I see it going away.
Yeah, I think so. I think so too.
I think 13-inch staying on the market was a bit of a bridge, but I think when Phil put up the graphic of the 12-inch MacBook, I don't know if it made any sense to have a bunch of pros on the picture, but 13-inch, 12-inch, whatever it is, the new MacBook Pro.
I think if I were,
that's a funny name.
If I were managing purchasing, I would probably be saying no more Airs, because there's going to be something, if it doesn't have a T1 chip, it's not going to have as long. I mean, right now we want, a 3.5, 4, 5 year life cycle out of machines. And I would
that's a long time.
Well, I mean, when you're talking to big enterprises, maybe.
Yeah,
only,
not all of us
but,
have startup money, Adam.
Oh,
Yeah.
I
And
don't
So-
education is another challenge where they've got to have something that meets the price point for people that are doing one-to-one rollouts where the parents have got to pay for these computers for the kids, and they're getting very expensive. I was around some calls from education today here in Australia where people are getting really freaked out by what's happening because it's looking expensive. The prices are going up, but also the other side of that, we know the direction Apple is going in with the file system and how that's going to integrate into this secure enclave. In terms of sustainability, any machines you're procuring now that don't have this feature, their end of life to be able to support things is going to come a lot sooner than the device that does have the secure enclave. It's going to be hard work. These are going to be the Power PC machines running an old OS that
Exactly.
you're sick of supporting.
I made that exact same analogy today when I was talking to our IT department about what we're going to make our standard intro machine now, because I remember those Power PC machines. We got about 18. We had customers that got about 18 months of life out of them before they were just seriously outdated immediately.
Yep.
So I think that might be the future of whatever errors are out there, even though it might be a little bit more expensive to get something else. It's like, you don't really want to be buying that,
That's a hard decision to have with a school in an area where they just simply can't afford that money, or the person who's making the decision is from finance rather than from IT, where
Google Chromebooks at that point.
Yeah, I remember having to manage multiple NetBoot images. I mean, not that we're going to have to do that in the future, but having to manage multiple NetBoot sets so that you've got your PowerPC and your Intel ones.
God, as someone who actually managed both, imaging and workflows this week, it was. I will really not miss that.
Yeah.
Charles, I'm not sure if you've heard, but I heard this crazy rumor this year that imaging is dead.
I heard this crazy rumor that there's a dedicated Siri key on the new machines. That's what we're here to talk about, right?
Yeah,
that's the important topic of the day.
which is why I'm not interested in learning how to touch type, because I just need the one finger to press that Siri key, Charles, and then.
I just saw Emily show up on the Slack channel.
Sign up.
Hi, Emily.
Hi, Emily. We miss you. The voice of reason is not here, so we have to talk about courage.
I thought that was me. I thought I was the voice of reason. No, I'm the voice of ranting about VG.
It's a trap.
Oh boy! So, did anything you saw today really just say, "Yep, I'm buying that"? So,
Apple TV.
let's go around the room here, and if are you ordering one of these today, or have you already? Adam, we'll start with you. Are you interested?
Are you sure you want to start with me?
Yes.
I'm not going to shut up for 10 minutes. So,
140 characters.
Mr.
So
Trump,
we'll do this in 3 steps.
20 seconds.
Yeah, we'll do this in 3 steps. Are you buying one, Adam?
am I buying?
Are you buying one of the new machines?
This is
Touch bar?
Boolean, not.
Yes or no?
I do really want to get a 13-inch touch bar.
Okay, cool.
I'll put it that way for now. I think you should come back to me.
All right, cool. Charles?
I buy everything.
Easy answer.
So it's already on order. It's coming. It's coming your
It actually
your way,
is
I'm
on
sure.
order. Yeah.
Nice. Marcus?
I've just bought a MacBook, so I'm trying to not buy one, I think, is the challenge. I'm really interested to see how it works and what you can do with it. So I will certainly need to be around one. This is a shot across the bow of how this whole ecosystem is going to work. So I think as an admin, you're either for it or against it, and I'm going to choose to be for it. So whether I buy one or whether I convince someone else to buy one that I can use, I want to see what it can do.
Yeah.
I miss being a consultant. Buy me toys.
Yeah, seriously. Combine?
Well, I'm working on a machine that's 4 months old, so deprecation-wise, no. But I would love to get one just for the research angle of it. I would like to see what is possible with this secure enclave processor. I really want to turn it inside out as much as possible and figure out. And unfortunately, because it is what it is, you cannot do that with an emulator or simulator of any kind. So for that purpose, I'd like to have one on hand at least. I don't necessarily know that I need to have one as a daily driver, but I would definitely like to have one on hand and kind of, kick it around and see what's going on.
Yeah.
As someone who writes a lot, I think the keyboard, just being able to touch the keyboard is important and see if I can type on. Like, I can't use my USB-C as my daily driver because I keep missing keys.
Yeah.
Well, it's the same keyboard, the same sort of chiclet keyboard as the MacBook One 12-inch. What do we call it?
It's revised. It is revised.
Yeah, he said it has
next
a
generation
quote, greater sense of keyboard travel.
Yes.
Well,
Sounded fabulous.
You're talking to the guy who types on an Apple Extended 2 keyboard every day, to the chagrin of all my coworkers.
Your 3270 terminal?
Exactly.
Hey man, you got to think the ROI on those keyboards it has been spectacular. The extended 2s, because I want to say those were like $200 like back in the day. But
Pretty expensive.
hey man, they never die.
So it still works. I made 80p is all you need.
I do feel like I'd be remiss not to mention the amount of time that they paid to the creatives. I feel like I talked to a lot of video editors who have been kind of complaining that Apple doesn't give them a lot of attention recently over the last couple of years. And the fact that they spent so much time showing how this new MacBook Pro is the video editing device, at least in their minds, of the future,
Yeah.
Well, they got it. It's a big market for them. The creative professional is a big market. I mean, whole movies have been edited on MacBook Pros in the past. Like, I think I don't know all the examples, but it's a big market. I mean, traveling, musicians who take these things around, they need to appeal to these people, because these are $2,400, $2,300 computers. This ain't, this isn't an impulse buy, unless you're Charles Edge, of course, but who buys everything. But artists need to be convinced about this. So I think it's smart. I mean, you're not going to show us, say it makes really great slideshows or spreadsheets. Like, that's cool, but you need to show it off a little bit.
I wish that they'd show more people making spreadsheets in their presentations. Actually.
Well, maybe next time. Hello again.
More people filing reports.
And so, let's talk
TPS
about
reports.
That's right.
what we didn't see today. And because I think that's kind of the elephant in the room. Well, we didn't see 32 gigs of RAM because we didn't see any changes to the iMac, or we didn't see any changes to the Mac Pro, and we didn't see any changes to the Mac Mini. There were no desktops at all today.
We did see a laptop being used in traditionally desktop scenarios, though. And I think
we did.
But maybe that's.
I'm actually glad you brought that up, Tom. I've had a really good thought about it. It's been a pretty crazy week. Microsoft released a desktop computer that actually looked nice.
Beautiful, as a matter of fact.
With some really creative ways to interact with it. They actually cared. They seem to care about more things besides making it cheap and allowing IT to lock everything down. But total legit, I'm not trying to be sarcastic, which I've been known to do. So the Surface introduced a different way to interact with your desktop computer via that dial. Apple introduced a slightly, what I feel might be an easier to get used to way to interact with your laptop computer. And I think there's an argument there that more people are interacting with their laptops than they are desktops. I feel like a desktop computer is something you have to go to a certain room in your house to interact with. Whereas the touch bar on the laptop is something that's always going to travel with you. So I think it's interesting that the two really play off each other.
Well, and the truth of it is, so with the Surface Studio looks fantastic in the videos, are people actually going to use it? Will the software actually be able to work the way the creatives want? Are there going to be other things about the Windows environment that creatives are going to shy away from? The amount of infrastructure they may need to change because they're used to running Macs and they don't want to run Windows. I think with the Touch Bar as well, a bit like the Apple Pencil and the iPad Pro, someone can release these things and tell us how we're going to use it in 12 months' time to see how things have gone. Where has it ended up? What comes next? What's the next product that Apple releases? Are there going to be desktops that are going to, have some other amazing feature?
Well,
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It's interesting to compare the video from yesterday from Microsoft with the video from today, where Apple, and it's not something they've done all the time, but they were very practical. They were like, look at all of these third-party apps that are making touch bar options, and look at Pixelmator, and look at Photoshop, and look at Final Cut Pro, and look at your terminal and your web browser and everything. Versus yesterday, it seemed like very tailored, like, look at this amazing way to interact with this studio computer.
Well, and there was a really good piece by Jerry Krahulik, who's an illustrator. He has a comic called Penny Arcade that a lot of people might have heard of. And he has been playing with a Surface Station for months now, and has largely been producing his work on the Surface Station. And, worked with Microsoft's Design Labs, worked with all of those things. And, if he can be a successful artist with that, even though it's just in a room in his house, but I can't tell you how many people I know who are writers, who are creatives of many kinds, whether they are, illustrators or videographers or musicians, who go to a space to do a creative task because they make that space theirs. And that's where they feel comfortable. And so I don't necessarily think that just putting a touch bar everywhere makes it suddenly more friendly to more people. But I certainly think that that there are now two different companies really focused on the attention of creatives. And one of them is doing desktops, and the other kind of sort of is doing desktops, but is really about mobility.
And focused on new ways for human interaction with their devices, whether it's a pad or a dial or what have you. I think, what they're maybe saying is that there's something that's next now, and looking to R&D out what that might be.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's Google Glass, for example, and things like that.
If Microsoft has learned from Apple to be very controlling of the hardware space, to design really amazing devices like the Surface Book, Surface Studio, if they've learned a lot of that from their consumers, like, I think that's a really good thing. Like, I have no problem with what Microsoft is doing. I think that's what their side of the industry.
Dell and Samsung and all the companies. Yeah.
Dell and Samsung need to stop sucking then. Like,
I think that's an interesting world unfolding. So I wouldn't be buying Dell stock today.
Dell and HP have been doing as much as they can to make really nicely usable devices. But
they're not in the same league as the Microsofts and the Apples of the world.
Yeah,
and
but it's also very good for Apple to have someone like Microsoft actually stepping up to the plate and having a go, because rather than Apple being able to talk about courage and can't innovate my ass, they've got someone going, well, don't just say it, actually prove it. Otherwise we'll take your market share away. And I would hazard a guess that the keynote may not have been the first time people at Apple saw the direction Microsoft was heading in. Maybe it was, but you know, I'm really interested to see what comes next from both of these companies. How do they iterate on this? How do they evolve these, you know, exciting new directions they're going in?
One thought I had
Hopefully
about the touch bar also is it's kind of Apple solving this problem that I think has been pointed out a couple times in the past about having gigantic touch screens that you need to somehow use with your hands. You're going to be obscuring large parts of the screen and not really gaining anything by the touch factor of it. They've kind of solved it in a way by moving a part of that touch capability off the screen below it, so you can still interact in that. Like I think the Photoshop presentation was the best of that, sort of showing it how it becomes like an instrument more than like a tool necessarily. But your hands are not covering the screen that you're looking for results from your touch interactions. Yet the bar is small enough and manageable enough that you can get a lot of mileage out of that. So it seems to kind of like solving it that way. Obviously, Microsoft with their dial, their thingamajig, trying the same thing, but they need to solve that. You can't have a 27, 30, whatever inch touch screen that you got to get your greasy paws all over and basically obscure 2/3 of what you're doing. So I think this is a pretty smart way of Apple to try to solve that. We might see more bars. We might see a bigger touch bar or multiple. We don't know where this is going, but there's the screen that you see what you're doing, and then the touch screen that you're interacting with to manipulate what you're seeing.
Yeah. Could the trackpad become another modifiable, customizable display?
OLED screen? Yeah.
Could be. That's actually a great point, because I think Apple said that, we're making the trackpad larger, and they sort of hinted at making new gestures or making just new ways to interact with the trackpad. And it was,
right.
and
the touch bar has
something's coming out.
The touch bar, when you look at the API for it too, the touch bar does definitely have gesture support, like pinch and whatever you can cram into that small bar. There are actually, it's not just a pure touch something and positional on the screen. It does whatever you touch. You can pinch, zoom, and I'm sure there's going to be multi-touch gestures that you can implement that as well. So I think it's more powerful probably than we realize right now.
So it's actually
we're at 3 minutes to an hour. Just point out.
So we're gonna have 20 minutes left. 23 minutes. I'm going to keep on talking until somebody turns off the live stream.
We can actually mute you.
Yep. Yes, we can. And
I'm the back. I found the button.
Yeah, darn it.
But in all seriousness, recently talking about the idea of like, what if the touchpad became a touch screen on our laptop. TechCrunch covered a great article only about 2 hours ago about what Apple doesn't want you to do with the touch bar, which was use the touch bar as an extension of the keyboard or trackpad, not as a display. The touch bar shouldn't display alerts, messages, scrolling content, etc., which means that I can't deploy a button to my company's touch bar with my face on it.
And then no animation, and then use color minimally.
Opens up an IT ticket. I can't do that. So,
actually, what they're saying is it's in the human interface. It's in the human interface guidelines. So these are not App Store requirements. These are not other things like this. This is the human interface guidelines, which is kind of the Bible for how Apple thinks things should work. And I think that's a little bit. I think we need to be careful when we talk about those things, that we don't confuse the HIG with the Bible.
Yes.
So I mean, I feel like it's a good place to start. But yeah, I mean, if you really want to make an app that adds the Atom button to all of the Upserve laptops, and
I'm just waiting for Nimecat. I mean, that's gonna be freaking awesome.
Hey, Alan, if you're out there, I know Alan from Watchman Monitoring is listening now. Wouldn't that be pretty cool? Is the Watchman Monitoring, a bug up at the top of the screen that is my Technolutionary Assist? Wouldn't it be great if that was a button?
It texts Alan.
Like, literally on his phone.
Literally text Alan, by the way, Tom has a new ticket. I want you to deal with it.
Hey, I can finally
for that inspiration.
I can finally get that or else button on my computer that I always wanted.
Yeah,
This or
yeah.
else.
And it just maps to sudo, right?
The fear that Mac OS and iOS are going to become one and the same, I don't think it's anytime soon. They're making it quite clear that iOS is for the phone and the iPad, and that's the one where you interact with the display. Mac OS has a different way of doing things at the moment.
And
so,
tvOS and watchOS. I mean, but I think the libraries that need to be maintained that are different is definitely being reduced.
Yeah, the same but different.
So it's actually funny because going back to the Surface Studio, I haven't used Windows 10 at all, but I feel like they're doing some sort of touchscreen thing, and so many people want Apple to put a touchscreen in their Mac, and as much as they're bringing a lot of design from iOS to OS 10, they're not making OS 10 a touchscreen, and I think that's probably a good thing. But
I don't know if it's a good thing or not. I think it's a thing. Whether or not it's good or not, it is entirely predicated on the execution. And I feel like Apple is kind of I don't want to bring about one of these Marco Arment functional high ground kind of worlds, but I will say that I am not a huge fan of the software that's coming out of Apple these days, or at least the new versions of old software that's coming out of Apple these days. I'm thinking here of mail, contacts, calendars, the basic PIM suite that exists out there that is a bucket of giant garbage. No, it's not that bad. It's really just a frustration in my everyday life. And it's a I would really like to see them put as much engineering effort into that as they put into the touch bar, because I think that there's a huge gap right now in Apple's credibility with me and with Apple's credibility as a user is how those apps function, and it's I don't know. I don't want to be Debbie Downer about the whole thing.
I shared a concern. I shared a concern, Tom, because there's a clear angle that gets a lot of horsepower, and there's certain things that are sort of like, kind of left behind a little bit. Like I haven't used Mail app in 5+ years because it's just no good. Like I can't deal with it. Calendar is just baseline, tolerable. Too often it will lose items I put on there, but I don't know. Maybe that is just not what sells computers anymore, and touch bars are. Maybe
could be. And I think Apple's
more than
in a bit
16
of
gigs of RAM would sell the computer to this guy.
True.
Man. It's funny. I didn't get to answer my own question earlier. I'm thinking about. I've got a real question as to whether or not I can live on a 13-inch versus a 15-inch, because I think that I can get pretty much the same config both places. I'm thinking about a terabyte of SSD, and thinking about 16 gigs of RAM and the nicer 3D card. But what I really can't tell right now is whether I can live on a 13-inch screen again.
So Tom, how many pictures a day do you take of that adorable kid?
And not nearly enough, if you ask either my in-laws or my parents.
Just throwing this out there. You got those sweet ACN coupons that I used to get. 2 terabytes, photos.
I exchanged some texts with my business partner this morning. He is in more dire need than I am right now, because he's on a 2012 and I'm on a 2013. So
yeah, but he sucks. He's not here.
Well, oh no, Mark's. You know what? Mark is on a really difficult assignment this week. Mark is working on a cruise ship. One of our big clients does a jazz cruise every year, and he is working 16-hour days to make sure that they can get all of their video uploaded to the cloud at night. And it is really busting his ass, and he's really, really stellar at that. So he gets first dibs. But yeah, one of those sweet ACN coupons would just about cover the upgrade between 1 terabyte and 2 terabytes on
16 gigs and 32. Oh wait, no, that's not enough.
13-inch with the 5K LG display. There you go. Have both.
You know, it's really funny. I've thought about that, but my thing is I can't tell if you guys can see here. I'll turn it around so that you guys can see. I've got a 20-inch, original Apple Cinema display here that I never ever plug into because I never work at my desk except when I'm doing the podcast. So I'm never here. I'm never where a monitor is. So
I just want a 5K so I can put these Google Hangouts up on a 5K screen, and so I can look at all your nose hairs while you're talking.
Well, I think that's gonna. We have last words here.
Way to kill it, Charles.
Yeah, no. I think we're in an hour. I think that's a good solid run at this. And so thanks everybody for coming out tonight. Do we have any last fun questions? Okay, I got a good one. What is everybody for Halloween this year? Adam?
I'm going to be Father Alfredo for a mystery dinner, murder mystery dinner, which we are doing for a Halloween party.
Awesome. Charles, and do you have a Halloween costume in mind
Marcus
this
is
year?
gone.
I have 3 or 4 parties I'm doing. One, I will be The Great Gatsby. That's probably the main one. So
Nice.
Tails, baby. Tails.
That's pretty excellent. Papine?
Nothing particular. Just helping the kids get all their Halloween stuff in order. My oldest is going as a classic Mac that he made out of a cardboard box.
Best ever.
He's
That's awesome.
Wins.
He's definitely my kid, obviously. So yeah, that keeps me busy.
Is he going to have two-factor authentication?
We're working on that.
So, Marcus, did they do Halloween in Australia, or is this really more of an American thing?
He's got something.
Yes.
Yeah, that'll come as no surprise to anyone who knows me. That my daughter and I have matching Darth Vader outfits.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I think Charlie's going to end up as either a fireman or he's going to end up as Captain America. We've got kind of both costumes, and we'll see what he's cottoning onto that day. And
Admiral Akbar's my spirit animal, Charles.
yes,
it's a trap.
That's pretty beautiful. So, thanks everybody for coming out tonight. You can find Adam Codiga at Adam Codiga on the MacAdmin Slack as well as on the Twitters. Charles, we can find you at Cryptid as pretty much all of the places. Marcus is at Marcus Ransom, and Papine is at Brienne, and I'm at T-Bridge. If you enjoyed our podcast tonight, we have a couple of episodes that are going to kind of stack up on top of each other over the next couple of days, because we just had episode 13 that dropped this week, as well as episode 13 and a half done live at JNUC that will come out hopefully tomorrow, the next day. Thanks again to our awesome mixing engineer, Aaron Lippincott, who helps us put all these together. So he uses Dials Mavis everywhere. And so thank you so much, Aaron. I can't tell you how much we appreciate you. I had to try and do it briefly. That is not a job I am good at. That is a job I am very, very bad at.
He doesn't just do it, he does it really well.
He does it real well. He makes me sound real good. And I got to say
It's
thanks
up
to
with
that.
all of our ness.
Yeah. And so, that, and then this episode will obviously be up there. You can visit the show notes at podcast.macadmins.org. We are working on getting the actual show notes into the podcast clients.
Oh, sure. Rub it in.
So that will happen. That I promise that will happen one way or another. And you can always see us at podcast.macadmins.org. Please leave us ratings on iTunes and Stitcher. That is how other people find us eventually. You can also star individual episodes in Overcast if that's your podcast client of choice, which it probably is. It's pretty awesome. Thanks, Marco. And it's if you're interested in sponsoring this podcast, you can email podcast@macadmins.org. We do have sponsorship opportunities available. So thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful evening. Say goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye, everybody.
All right.
See you later.
Nobody wants a 17-inch laptop, by the way.
Oh, don't start that fight. Some people are going to get angry. Have a good evening, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
See you later.